It's Titan time. So far in Project Midwinter Mini's Warlord Titan, we've built both of its massive arm-mounted weapons, the Ariok Power Claw and the Sun Fury Plasma Annihilator. Behind the scenes and on a few live streams with my buddy Ant, we sawed the parts away from the resin gates, nipped off the smaller connection points, and cleaned off the flash and big mold lines with hobby knives. We also ticked off the hundreds of parts, making sure we don't have any more missing, and I'm pleased to say it looks like everything's all here. My name's Guy, you're watching Midwinter Minis, and in today's video I'm going to be building the Warlord Titan's head. And to make it extra special, this isn't just any old Warlord Titan head, this is the limited edition, now discontinued, beta pattern head. It was only ever available for a few years, and I could be wrong, but from what I've read it seems it was never available online, only in store at Warhammer World in Nottingham. So how did I get hold of this titanic rarity? Well, after watching through the tragedy of our unboxing video where we realised that the head wasn't included with the body, and that you had to order it separately, a friend of the channel, Mitch from Tyrannosaur, took pity on us and sent us the beta pattern head. To thank him, we donated the retail price of the head as well as all of the ad revenue from the super chat money we received on that live stream to the charity of his choice, the Michael J. Fox Foundation. So let's open it up and take a look at what we've got here. We've got the standard Guide to Building Resin Kits leaflet, a pretty simple construction guide, and the container of parts. About a dozen nice little chunks of resin, which form the different sections of the head structure. These are detailed on both sides, so if you want to create a diorama where you see inside the cockpit, all the control panels, displays and techie bits and bobs are here too. You also get a few bonus minis, a couple of Moderatii? Who knows, sort of co-pilots for the Titan, who are fused into its sensors and movement controls. And then you've got this pretty chill looking dude, the Princeps, who essentially is the Titan. Story-wise, they mentally bond with the Titan's own machine spirit, but apparently the ordeal is pretty grueling and only a few people are really capable of doing it without going insane. Because the Battle Titans themselves are thousands of years old and the Princeps are more or less regular humans, as they grow old and their bodies die and decay, they become entombed within the Titan's head, kept alive like Mr. House in New Vegas. Pretty grim. Pretty dark. Grimdark, if you will.
Why have you done this?
Anyway, back to the model. So there's 9 bits that go together to create the structure of the head. You also have these 2 heraldic shields that go on the Titan's body, and these are a slightly different shape from the Alpha Pattern shield as well. So let's crack on with building. I used a hobby saw to cut away the big vents and remove the blanks. These pieces are relatively small compared to some of the giant Titan bits, so I could actually use hobby snips to remove all but the biggest ones. I didn't take any footage of my face while I was doing this, but I was wearing a dust mask for safety. You really don't want to be inhaling any of this resin powder. Rather than trying to do everything in one snip, sometimes the way the sprues connect to the parts, you're better off cutting the connector away so that it's flush with the surface, and then trying to snip away the overhanging excess on the model part, like this. That's all out the way. Now one side of my cutting mat is covered in Titan head bits, the other side is covered in resin offcuts, and the middle is covered in resin sawdust. The resin blocks go in the bag with all of the other Titan offcuts, so I can weigh it when the project's done and see how much Forge World resin I paid for that's gonna end up in landfill. The sawdust, small chunks and trimmings got dumped into my container of scratch building waste, which I'm collecting for a future video on making realistic junk piles and built up dirt. Make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out on that literal pile of crap. Okay, final cleanup of the Titan head parts. First a quick trim with the hobby knife to get the connection points as flat as we can, and then we can tidy up the few little areas that have mold lines or mold slip, like this little bit along the armor trim. Cutting these flat rather than filing them is way better for small details like this, especially when they're near rivets and other little bits that might end up being filed off by mistake. It's much easier to control a sharp knife than a big file. Some bits also have what are called shims in the gaps, basically very thin, flat areas of resin near fragile, dangly bits that kind of ensure the pieces are cast correctly and maintain their shape, more or less. We'll get on to potentially warped stuff in a minute. Once the pieces are clean, I dropped them all into warm, soapy water, let them sit for a few minutes, and then started scrubbing them all with a toothbrush. What we're trying to do here is get rid of any mold release residue. It's a kind of non-stick spray that molds are coated with in the casting process that helps the resin not get stuck to the mold itself, but it also does a pretty good job of stopping glue and paint sticking to the resin properly, so we want to scrub it all off before we assemble. After they're scrubbed down, I dry fitted the parts to make sure they'd fit together nicely and weren't warped. This is also a great chance to see if any small niggles that you have about how parts fit together actually don't matter at all. Like this bit where the two faceplates join together. There's an ugly join on the band above the eye sensors there, but when you put the top cover on, it totally hides it, so there's no need to waste time trying to smooth it out. However, now they're together, I can see these bits do have quite a sizable gap between them, and they look like they're supposed to be one smooth armor plate, so we might have to do some gap filling to make it look a little bit better later on. On the other side, in the center of the cockpit, there's a 1 or 2 millimeter gap where those plates go together. I've got to say, that's another nail in the coffin of gluing this head shut and forgetting all about the details on the inside. Okay, so now I know where everything fits together. I'm going to use Gorilla Gel Superglue to attach all the parts. This stuff is super strong. I glued a few of the resin blanks together using it, and they are really hard to break apart. A few dots or a little streak on a connection point, hold the parts together for about 10 seconds, and you're free to carry on working. It's a great time saver compared to epoxy glues. Right, closing off the head. Do we? Don't we? We do. And I'll tell you why. First, the way it's mounted on the Titan itself would be super fiddly to remove the roof of the head and almost impossible to see inside anyway, thanks to these big armor panels. Second, I want to smooth out the misaligned gap on the armor between the sides and the roof. If it's removable, it'll still kind of look disjointed. And third, even though it would be cool to see the Princeps chilling out in his cockpit, this model isn't going to be the Princeps for my Titan. Behind the scenes, I've been up to stuff. I've designed my own model to use as a Titan pilot, a night pilot, or even just a fancy Inquisition or Guard HQ model. I can't wait to show you it properly, and thanks to the amazing team at Anvil Industries, it'll be available to order soon. But for now, let's get that roof glued on. And yeah, I know you can see it too. There's some pretty unsightly gaps on a few of those parts. These gaps under the head are pretty huge, but to be honest, you won't ever really see them. These gaps at the side, kind of on the cheeks, are pretty wide, and they won't be hidden by these pipes, so I think we're going to have to fix those before we attach the pipes. To fill the gaps, I'm going to mix up a tiny amount of Milliput, which is a 2-part plastic epoxy type stuff that cures in about 24 hours. You just mix up equal quantities of both materials in the box, smoosh them together over and over until they're a consistent colour, and then you can use it. I like to leave Milliput for about an hour before I start working with it, as when it's freshly mixed it's a bit too squishy. Leaving it for a bit lets it firm up slightly, and it's easier to work with. Keeping your tools and fingers moist with water so the stuff doesn't stick to you instead of the model, scoop up tiny bits of the mixed Milliput and slap it down in the right place. Using a little flexible silicone tool, I smush the Milliput into the gaps. We don't have to worry about being too careful here, there aren't many details to obscure, we just want to make sure those gaps get filled up. And we can easily wipe away the excess Milliput from this smooth surface, using plenty of water to stop it sticking or leaving too much residue behind, and then just move on to the next bit. Again, smush it in the gaps, wipe off the excess, and clean the surface with a moist tool.
Yeah.
I heated those tubey bits under the hairdryer for 10 seconds or so to make the resin a bit more flexible, and then glued it in place at the sides of the head. This way the cables will flex, allowing the contact points to sit nicely and not leave any more gaps to fill. There is a little gap left behind after attaching these, but honestly, you're never going to see it from an obvious angle. The Titan's armor panels obscure most angles that aren't just dead on. Looking pretty good. To make the filled gaps just a little bit smoother, I'm going to give them a gentle rub with a sponge file again, and then I'm going to use Tamiya thin plastic cement to just wipe away the dust. Milliput dust dissolves into this glue, so it should make the surfaces nice and smooth, so you'll hopefully barely notice they're there once paint has been applied. Now, I wouldn't usually bother doing this on most stuff, but as it's the head, and it's the most noticeable bit of the model, I don't really mind giving that extra bit of attention. The ball and socket joint at the back of the head will eventually be pinned to attach it to the body, but we'll jump that hurdle when we come to it. So, there we go. The head of the Warlord Titan is ready and waiting for the body. It is pretty huge, about twice the height of a Space Marine, but this kit retailed for about £65 back in the day, and the current Alpha pattern head sells for £69 now. While I like the kit, I think it's quite pricey, all things considered. For pretty much the same price you could buy a whole Imperial Knight, and to be honest, I think it's a bit cheeky not just including it with the body in the first place, but hey ho, lesson learned. As I won't be using them in this project, I've put the limited edition Titan Princeps and his Moderati buddies on eBay, and I'll be donating 100% of the proceeds to the Michael J. Fox Foundation to thank Tyrannosaur for sending me the kit. If you want to donate to Mitch's fundraiser directly, or grab that Princeps, I'll leave the links that you need in the description. Before I love you and leave you, we are currently taking pre-orders for limited edition black metal style Midwinter Minis logo t-shirts and hoodies, so if you want to show your love for two niche interests at once, you can do it in style. I asked Christoph Speidel to design it. He's the black metal logo guy and has done logos for Dimmu Borgir, Emperor, and Rihanna? Pre-orders will start shipping in December, so you'll probably have it by Christmas if you get your order in now. And finally, I'd like to thank the channel's latest Patreon signups while I show you some glamour shots of the head. Nick, Mr. Hairy Bacon, Robert Daniel Picard, Colin Valentin, Jason Owen Black, Stephen Harper, Zach Benstead, Jeff K, Natasha Griffin, Wicked HDI, GPK, Battleborn Hobbies, Paul Wilson, El Foto Diablo, Cyberbones, Tom Teagan, Christoph Towan, Sam Hudson, Andrew McMichael, James Kerry, Tony Shannon, Midwinter's Little Helper, Ben Efren, Eric Hickyer, Max Philip Schrader, Wesley Moore, Lord Sir Knight, Richard Lloyd, Brad Hammer Paints, Sky, Ginger Jedi, Ryan Jarvis, Good Luck Good Cup, Zack Attack 10, Saltire Scale Models, and that guy I met at a few parties before COVID and thought he was kinda cool, but for the life of me I can't remember his name. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now!